Hello.
How are
Um,
you?
it's all good. Uh, do you prefer Victoria or Tori?
Tori.
Tori. All right, let me just circle that. Um, so this interview is yeah, it's about the Israel-Palestine conflict. See if we could find a way for both opposing sides to come together for peace. But first we have to understand each other. But my priority is to understand your viewpoint, a pro-Palestine viewpoint. I think that a lot of people on my side don't fully understand your side, and I feel like these interviews are gonna bring us closer to understanding. And of course, my cat is making okay. So actually so I saw your answers, so I think that you would be good for the interview. Some people they kind of lie about the answers. Oh, your cat's there too. Okay, that's funny.
It's okay. We both have cats. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Um, Just just a quick question before I start the timer for the 1 hour. Um, what actually made you interested in doing this interview?
I guess what made me interested is the fact that there was somebody who, I mean, I don't really know anything about you, but what you just said is that you're opposing side. So I guess I haven't really had a conversation with um a non, I guess,
Someone who doesn't
pro-Palestinian.
identify as pro-Palestine.
Yeah. So I haven't really had a discussion because frankly it's just kind of exhausting and I feel like it's kind of hard to have peaceful conversations. I've been an activist and an organizer for a long time, so I know what it is to like not be respected in conversations and I just don't really have space or capacity to talk to many people who aren't on my side right now.
Can I say I
So
have a lot of
I guess what
respect for that you're doing this then?
thank you. Yeah, I mean, I have respect too that you are putting your opinions aside and wanting to understand. Um, I feel like we need more of that. I feel like it's just two extremes, of just like hatred that's building. But I think understanding is important. So I guess that's why I'm here. And like if I can bring any um awareness or like understanding to you, then that's I served my pro-Palestinian people, like
Hmm.
I would be able to like speak for us or speak for people who can't. So that's why I'm doing this.
One thing that I noticed with the pro-Israeli crowd is that they're all willing to speak. Like maybe 90% of them are actually willing to speak. The problem is that like when you speak to them, they try to like change your mind through like facts and this and that. How could you say this? How could you say Israel is an apartheid state or is committing genocide? Like um they look more like at the facts and they do less understanding. And I think that's where like a lot of the
Yeah.
conflict also comes in. They're all willing to talk, it's just the way they talk is I guess not sensitive enough, which is one thing that I'm really trying to work on, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, um,
I yeah, I agree with that. But cool.
Okay, I'm actually gonna put the timer on 55 minutes because I talked like a good amount and I don't want to waste too much of your time. So okay. Um, the way that I like to start these is we would like to find a common goal with everything that's going on here. I noticed that the common goal that people always agree on initially is um stopping the deaths of innocent Palestinian civilians. I could usually find
Right.
common ground there in the beginning. Later, I noticed it changes, and which is really interesting to me. We'll talk about that. But that's usually initially what people agree on. Is that a common goal that mean you could have?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a common goal would be to end up on the fact that the murder of any civilian innocent is not, okay, that's no. I also feel like a common goal would be to at least, I feel like there's not a lot of accountability that's happening, um, in my opinion, on the pro-Israel side. I feel like there's a lot of like ignoring the fact that this does have to do with imperialism and colonization. And I feel like just some sort of accountability or reaching an accountability would be like a goal, but I can understand if or I can respect if that's not something that can be done. But I
Well,
do feel like accountability,
let's say they
you know?
admit, let's say the Israelis, which are again a mix of Muslim people and like people from around the world, but let's say the whole state of Israel admits that they actually did colonize that land, where and there was that accountability, and they admit it. Where do you think we would go from there?
I feel like where we would go is like, okay, fuck, like now we can take a breath because it's not like we're fighting to be seen. Like it's not like people are fighting to not be invisible anymore. It's like, okay, there's an understanding that it's not an individual. I feel like a lot of people have been disgusting and rude toward Jewish people and Israelis in general just because of who they are, rather the fact that the issue is Zionism and the issue is the government and what the government chooses to do. So I feel like if people take accountability for the fact that, yeah, my government is fucked up and they're doing things that we don't approve of because of imperialism and because of the fact that the government's an apartheid, creating an apartheid state, then we can go from, okay, what do we do with the government? How do we make it not apartheid? And how do we come to respect, I guess, the needs of both sides? Because I feel like now it's come to a point where there's going to be only one winner. And I feel like since Israel's government has so much power and leverage, like the least that could be done is taking accountability for the fact that there's some fucked up shit going on, you know?
Wouldn't
But
there
as
still
far
need
as,
to be like justice for what the Israelis did, in your opinion? Or in the opinion of the
I mean,
people in your crowd?
I feel like as far as justice, um, I feel like that's not even what pro-Palestinians are looking for right now. They're just looking not to be, Palestinian people are looking not to be genocided. They're looking not to be murdered, you know? And obviously we're looking for a ceasefire to not do that. But we're also looking to have like a say, to have a word, you know, and what's going on. Because at this point, it seems like it's Hamas, which, you know, the Israeli government and people are doing all of this for, but that results in the genocide and death of thousands of people that are rendered invisible.
I'll agree with you there on the death of thousands of people. I think it's horrible. I've seen the videos. I've talked to people who had family there, and I use this example a lot. I talked to somebody who actually lost 7 family members in the bombings. So it's like it's difficult for me to trust the some of the numbers that the Ministry of Health of Palestine gives out. But what I do know is that it, from what I see from the videos and from the people that I talk to, it does seem like pretty accurate numbers, like in the thousands, tens of thousands of people who died. And I think that's terrible, it's devastating. And I also know for a fact that not all, but the majority of the pro-Israel people that I speak to, they hate the fact that the civilians are dying. But they could hate the fact that the civilians are dying, but also be upset that like the news doesn't broadcast how many terrorists are killed, just like all of them in total to make it seem worse, not worse than it is, but like make it a little biased. But then we could also say that none of them are terrorists. They're all freedom fighters. They're all martyrs, and they're all just resisting. So I guess there are different sides to that. But I do want to agree with you that all these lives that are being lost, I wish it was not happening, and it is devastating. Yeah.
Right. But so I think that if it's okay if I ask questions too, I guess I just want to know, like, is is that all you see? Like, yes, of course, the general person with humanity would hate the murder of innocent civilians, regardless of whether or not that concluded in maybe like murders of terrorists, right? But is it worth it to like see so many thousands of people die just for getting that state? Like, is that worth it? Because I just am curious about that.
I don't I don't think it's worth it, but one thing, by the way, every Israeli pro-Israeli person will say like, well, there is no other choice, and then that would probably trigger you, and I'm trying to find a way to navigate that. I don't want to say it's worth it, but I've been studying like protector parts recently, like in psychology. And I'm also trying to look at collective protector parts of groups of people, like religion, for example. Like it would protect certain groups in a certain way because of um traumas that we had to face thousands of years ago that we're not facing now. You know, like you would have to have an excuse. You would have to rationalize the brutality of the world through like the gods are doing this because they're angry, you know. So it's like it's protectors, you know. We have to find a way to cope with life. And what I see here is Israel, the state of Israel or the government of Israel is like, well, let's not do if we haven't there was a time where we did not do punitive punishments, which is what's happening now it's something called punitive punishment, which is like you do something 10 to 20 times worse to make sure something like that doesn't happen again. There was a time where they didn't do that, and no, I don't like where this is their perspective. There was a time where they didn't do that, and Hamas or the PLO, they just did even worse terrorist attacks afterwards. And now that they're doing this, they think, okay, maybe if we just like um, have a bombing run that's so bad, and we just get rid of Hamas and we go in and then we do an occupation again, then this won't happen again. A massacre that happened October 7th. So it's a protective part that is going is doing something that should not be done. And I don't agree with what's happening, but not because of the lives that are being lost, because it's like that's part of it. But the biggest part is, will it work? And it's like, no,
Mhm.
they're doing exactly what Hamas wants, which is they kill so many civilians that the world will have to come in the aid and then try to destroy Israel, like the Muslim world, which they're kind of yeah. So it's like, is what Israel is what it's doing gonna protect them? Probably not. They should have taken care of this issue when there was that ceasefire for 2 years between 2021 and 2023.
Right. And so I guess my main question is that yes, there's all this movements towards protection of like X people, and what you're saying is like these these initiatives are towards protection and hopefully to work. But what what does the pro-Israel side want to do with Palestinian people? Because in my understanding of Zionism, um, it's it's believed that Israel and Israelis and Jewish people have the right to that land.
Yes.
But is it solely theirs? Where do the Palestinians go? Where are these people going to be displaced to? And
So yeah.
because of the sorry, just to continue,
Yeah.
because of the fact that there's so many people being killed, of course, I would hope that for pro-Israeli side, it is devastating to see that. But isn't that in your benefit at the end of the day if there's not Palestinians left to like deal with? Wouldn't that be helpful in your case for a full Israeli state?
So the Zionist movement, from what I understand, is to take back the full land of Palestine, and also like I think there are parts of Lebanon or wherever they're wherever the Jews actually like um had all their territories. I don't see it as a possibility, but that's the radical side of Zionism. That's actually like I've actually watched interviews with like the settlers in the West Bank, and I was like, come on, man, like how are you gonna have peace if you have that kind of mindset? You can't.
Yeah.
So the other side, I think in like 1927, there were two partitions or agreements on division of land. the Israelis, they got like a lot less land in that agreement, and like a lot less. And Palestine refused to do that agreement. And then more Jews came in, and then it was like 50-50. And the Jews were like okay with that, but Palestine was not okay with it because they want the full land. So the extremists of Zionists, they actually really want all of it, and I don't agree with that. The other ones want part of, like, a good, like a split, but then again, the other argument is like, well, you're not really from here anyway, you're from Europe. Or yeah, so like, why would we give you any part of land? And these are the Muslim people that I've spoken to, and it's a really good argument. But there's a lot of like immigrants coming in to the United States legally and illegally, and we all find a way to like live together. And that's exactly what the Jewish people who came from Europe, they tried to do. They didn't try to like divide the land. What happened was the Muslims started attacking the Jews, and then the British realized there's no way they could coexist. It's just impossible. So we have to split it. I wish there was a way for
But
everybody
so
to
then,
coexist.
but so then that resulted in occupation, correct? Because it was like they came in and they weren't granted what they initially wanted. So then occupation happened. And I feel like occupation happens in a lot of ways. Like globally, there's so much occupation happening in so many places, like especially in the 20th century. Like, for example, like you just see the colonization and imperialism in a lot of different places. Like I'm personally from Puerto Rico. I see within the United States on our country. Um, you kind of see this occupation with even like Turkey and Cyprus, which is something that I've learned recently, like these occupied places that it's like,
I'm
okay,
glad
like
you're
I
aware
want to
of
come
that.
in. Yeah, of course. And I mean, it's honestly really crazy because they're also right next to each other. Like Cyprus with the occupied Cyprus from Turkey is literally right next to Palestine and Israel and Lebanon and all these places. And there's just so much like tension and pressure, but there are also like resources there. That's why they're occupied. And there's ports for like giving things to like the countries around, you know? So it's like you just see so many of these occupations and you just see these places that are occupied that people didn't have a say in how they were occupied or like how other people came in. It was just kind of like, okay, these people with greater power than us are coming in. And the only way that we know what to do is through revolution and through like fighting. Because, in my opinion, at least what I know about, I mostly can speak on Puerto Rico and United States, but the only way that I feel like colonizers are like white colonialism understand like anything is through violence. Like I feel like that sadly is the language of like colonialism is violence. That's how they get things that they like. So I just think when black and brown people fight back, that's when these huge things come into play, like all these revolutions in my country and these different countries of just like, no, we don't want this imperialism. We don't want you to come in. You didn't start with peace. So how can we promote peace? Like I feel like you were saying, it's like the only way, like I feel like the only way people will listen to these kind of oppressed or like marginalized places is if we fight back. And it just fucking sucks because that just means there's loss for a lot of people, regardless, you know?
There are obviously a few things that I disagree with what you said, but it doesn't mean I shouldn't try to understand you further. From what you were saying, it sounds like you're coming from a place of like not hopelessness yet, but the only way to get what we want is through the resistance, through violence, because as you said, it feels like it's the only way that the white colonialists will understand that like we're in pain and we want certain freedoms and you're not giving it to us. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Is there anything else like that you feel like I'm missing about your perspective?
Um, I guess that's kind of just like how I see things. I feel like every person is going to have an individual perspective based on where they come from and based on their life experience, you know? So that's my life experience, based on like my roots and like ancestry and things, and people are gonna have a lot of different things to say. I just feel that I'm curious about like what maybe the pro-Israel side, for example, has to say about what Palestinians should do as far as in this like conflict. Like, what's your perspective on what should be done for like the most peace possible on the Palestinian side?
Um, I'm glad you asked that. Um, and I will, I'll answer you first because I respect the fact that you're asking a question. And then I have one that I would like to ask you once we're finished with this. What I notice is that in there are two sides. One side cares more about the Palestinian people, like there's a pro-Palestinian side, right? And there's two sides in that pro-Palestinian side. One side like kind of cares about the people and they see the genocide that's happening, the mass death that is happening now, and they want to stop that. The other side, they're leftist and they want communism, and they don't actually have the biggest problem with the bombings. They have a problem with Israel being like the productive, and they see it as like that's the danger. So they want to take the resources from Israel, distribute it equally with the West, with all of Palestine. So those are the two sides that I see who are pro-Palestine. If you're talking about stopping the bombing, what is my perspective? There was a ceasefire already in 2021. Do you remember what happened in 2021 by any chance?
I would love it if you could tell me
Yeah.
a little bit because I don't. Yeah.
It was the same rocket barrage that happened in October on October 7th, except minus the breaching the border and raping and killing all the people there. Um, and they had the Iron Dome system, but the whole point was to try to overwhelm the Iron Dome system to attack targets there. And Israel also did a lot of strikes, and it killed a lot of people in Gaza. And then they agreed on a ceasefire. Um, and the ceasefire lasted 2 years, and they started giving work permits to the people of Gaza to come into Israel. And because there was a ceasefire, and that's when all the leftists they started in Israel. They started like protesting against the right wing government of Israel, and everybody let their guard down because they thought we're finally having peace with Gaza. And and then during that peacetime, Gaza was building up, plans to do what they did on October 7th. And there were already the permits coming in. Like they had the work permits, people were coming in, and the people of Gaza who came in, some of them, not the majority of them, they just worked. But some of them they looked at all the infrastructure of that southern part of Israel, and they planned the attack when they came back to Gaza. And so I think that if the goal is peace, it would have been for Gaza to just not send the rockets on October 7th, because we were moving towards peace. The side that sees the bombings as genocide, I think that they would be more okay with that, more like cooperation, and later on we could talk about the land and all of that. The side that is just wants Israel out, they said that that peace was still considered genocide, and they um they justified the attack on October 7th, even though there was that peace for 2 years, because it wasn't real peace to them. It was still oppression, right? Even though they're moving towards
Mhm.
peace. So so that's my perspective. And then from there we could see what you think, and then see like where we could find common ground.
Right. So yeah, I feel like I think that with this interview, for me specifically, like I said, have been an activist and organizer for a while. I try and understand, but like everything that is going on, obviously I'm not Palestinian. I am not Israeli. I feel like, you know, before I maybe wouldn't have had so much to say. But now, because of how much loss is happening and like how much people are being honestly desensitized and like losing humanity, I feel like this is where everybody has to come in and like speak and be like, holy shit, like it's just chaotic and it's like honestly disgusting and horrible that like there's so many things happening. And so obviously I never would want to overstep like anybody's toes, especially those who are directly affected by this. So with what you said, like I appreciate you teaching and educating because I think it's important, especially for me as somebody who like I said, has not had any association with this personally before right now. And like um with that being said, I do feel like as far as peace goes, I think it's difficult. I especially think that what you were saying about like October 7th and like that disruption to peace. Um, I honestly, as an outside perspective, I could just compare it to like with what you said, like peace could have been kept or like pushed towards if Gaza hadn't sent the rockets on October 7th, right? Um, I think that it's important to have a separation between who's doing what, like I wouldn't say that it was Gaza who allowed for that to happen or who planned for that. I feel like with what we know, it was Hamas and that group specifically. That doesn't, just like the Israeli government doesn't speak for all Israeli people or Jewish people and what they want. Hamas or the actions or what is considered like terrorist attacks, especially on October 7th, is probably not what all people wanted. I really do not believe that as far as Muslim like religion goes, I don't think hurt or murder or pain brought upon other people is even in the religion, but there are extremist groups.
Have
Sorry, you're
you
gonna say
looked,
something.
yeah, have you looked into like interviews with people in Palestine and Gaza and have you seen the pro-Palestine statistics on the viewpoints of the people? I'm just curious.
No, but if you have something to share, I
Okay.
would be open to hearing it.
Okay. I've seen some videos and I've seen a lot of people who want peace, right? I've seen a lot of it. There was one channel I think Corey, and he has really good videos where he pushes the Israelis and also the Palestinians on like tough topics. And I've seen a lot of people. I was surprised by a lot of the people who do want peace. A lot of the Gazan people, and I was like, holy shit! Like I thought all of them are like they all want war with Israel, and it's not true. But I've also seen like people over and over and over again say that they always say this is our land. So whatever violence we need to use is justified. And some usually women say we want peaceful protest. And I've seen the mix, but I've also seen a lot of I maybe 50-50, but the other 50% like extremists. That's what I've seen, and it also correlates with the data that I've seen from pro-Palestinian places. But again, this is my information. I would actually like for you to do the research and see whether what I'm saying is like BS or not. Yeah, there are good
Okay.
people there.
Okay,
There
cool.
are really good people there, which is
I feel like
unfortunate
there's
for
good
them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's good people on both sides, but then we also, as people who take an opinion, we have our confirmation bias, like we're gonna get exposed to our side of things and want to see what we want to see, right? I feel like since we're not actually there, it's hard to have like a full 100% educated researched opinion, like we're not there experiencing. Um, I do, however, feel that while there is people on both sides who want peace, there are people on what I have seen a lot through media, um, and on both sides, like there are people just doing really disgusting things, like just gross people having really disgusting things to say about Jewish people or Israeli people and that religion, and also just people on the pro-Israel side just promoting and like laughing at these murders and also wanting to give into it. Like I've seen interviews about, pro-Palestinian people interviewing Israelis in Israel who are like who have laughed at the fact that they have killed Palestinians or who are excited to shoot rockets at random places with no destination, just with the intent to murder, and it just makes me feel like it takes you back a little bit. And it's kind of just like, how are there people here who are laughing at the murder of like innocent people, despite the fact that they are like, maybe they'll murder who they consider to be terrorists, but like at the end of the day, laughing and shooting with like no intent is how some people in like the IDF are going about things. And just looking at that, I feel like it's hard. Like, what would you have to say about that? Like, I feel like it's hard
I
to
think,
understand.
yeah, I think that there are civilians who feel that way. The Israeli civilians who feel that way, and Palestinian civilians who feel that way, like on both sides. The radicalism on both sides. I'm not going to deny it on either side. The IDF, I don't think that there's enough evidence that the IDF are just like laughing about sending random rockets. A lot of the rockets are precision guided from the United that we use from the United States, like JDAMs and things like that. They do. They This was before 2023. Now it's different. Now it's like total war. And again, I don't agree with it. But before, and people had a problem with this too, like they had drones that dropped pamphlets in Arabic. They had phone calls to the buildings to get everybody out. They had one bomb that detonated on top as a warning shot, and then the building would be destroyed. Um, and I think casualty rates for even like civilians or even people in general was one of the lowest of any other country, like whether it's Syria, Saudi Arabia's bombings on Yemen, or whatever the United States did in Iraq. It's one of the lowest. And the Israelis, like, I'm not going to say they care, the IDF cares the most about the Palestinians, but they do a better job than most countries. I wouldn't I wouldn't be surprised if there were some people in the IDF who were like, who cares? But I know that Gaza didn't drop pamphlets on the at not the parades, the music festival on October 7th to let them know that, hey, there's gonna be bombings. I know they didn't do that. So the IDF is not perfect. I would not be surprised if they do exactly what you said. I haven't seen a lot. I personally haven't seen any videos of them laughing and saying of the IDF laughing and saying we don't care where the bombs drop, whether it's on civilians or not. But if you show me that, it would change my mind on that. But I would not be surprised if that's there, and I think it's bad, and I think that would be bad. That's what I want to say.
Okay. I wait, I had a question. I'm curious about sorry, go ahead. I kind of like it slipped my mind with what happened, but go ahead.
It's all right.
Sorry.
You mentioned we should fight back, right? Against white colonialism and this oppression that we're facing. Well, the minorities are facing. When you say we, like, what do you mean by that? I'm curious about that. The resistance, like, who does
Yeah.
the fighting?
So when I say fight back, I'm not talking about like full on violence. I feel like every day I wake up, me and my comrades, we wake up and we fight with boycotting, we fight with calling our representatives, with calling people around us who are like supporting or not saying anything. Um just talking about it, like I feel like even me being here speaking about my side and you too, like we're fighting for what our group, our designated groups kind of like need and like are trying to say. I just feel like it's extremely important to be doing that. But as far as what I was saying with like the white colonialism and fighting back in like the language that they understand, I study sociology. I study health. Um, So I study a lot of things, and I going back looking at history, um American specifically, going from like the Industrial Revolution to now, and all these different changes that have occurred and happened, and like different political and like economic contexts, and the different groups who have tried to change, like you were talking about communism, different groups who go in and like try and fight and push towards communism or some things that they believe in. I honestly feel like historically that's how things have gotten done, with some sort of revolutionary group, some sort of push towards initiative or change, because at the end of the day, like you were saying, I'm not yet hopeless. I'm not yet, but it's hard not to get there, like, because from me as an outsider, like this is day 73, I think. It just seeing so much loss, and especially being in New York, I feel like everybody, there's so many people, there's so much grief, there's so much trauma. It's hard to have hope, I feel like, especially like I was saying, historically speaking, Black and brown people do not win. Um, and I'm not talking about like the individual, like statewide. I feel like countrywide, America is white imperialist, Europe is white imperialist. Like there are places who have colonized Latin America, Africa, the Muslim world, that, historically these underrepresented or like marginalized people with less power will not win. And that's what it feels like here. It honestly does feel like at this point, and you probably hear this all the time when you're interviewing pro-Palestinians, it fucking sucks to say, but it really feels like I'm about to see this whole population of Palestinian people and backgrounds dissipate from the earth. Like it genuinely just feels like that every day. Like we're losing more and more people to the point where it doesn't even feel like a solution can happen, because even if there was a two-state solution, where are these people going to go back to? Like there's nothing left. And even if there was some sort of peace to be agreed upon, or like, okay, everybody can go back and like we'll start over. There's the agriculture is like so important to
Well, I
Palestinian
mentioned to
land.
you the work permits that were given in that 2 year
Right.
period, and Israel, like
Do
I
you
know,
think that would happen
I
again? Since
think
you
I
said that,
think
you know,
I think that if Palestine wants to conquer all of Palestine, like get rid of Israel, I think all they had to do was like just not launch the missiles, allow the leftists to take power in Israel, and then they're going to allow more and more of the people from West Bank and Gaza to like come in, and then they could conquer it that way if that's what they really want to do. As you see what's happening in Europe and the United States with the open borders and everything. So they could have done it that way because the leftists they're like you, they're compassionate, they want equality, if not equity, like redistribution of everything. Um, so I think that would have been a better strategy, but instead they chose to do something that they knew was gonna kill their own civilians. And I just don't think that form of resistance would accomplish anything for the Israelis or for Gaza. I think there are other avenues of achieving what we want. If the role, let's say the role of Hamas is to destroy Israel, I think that they did a stupid fucking job at it. Because Israel's very powerful, and they could have done it through the
yeah,
leftists. That's what I think.
right. And so, but now what? Like now we're here, can't go
Mm.
back. Things are worsening every single day for a lot of different people, and it's like, what what the fuck could even happen now? Like let's say there was a ceasefire, and then it was like, okay, let's have a two-state solution discussion, and let's come together and try to figure something out. Like with what you were saying with giving Palestinians work permits going into Israel, but because of that, with what I'm understanding with what you said, that gave Palestinian people, especially groups that planned the attack on October 7th within Hamas, to get a look at the infrastructure and like plan out accordingly. I feel like if that is an understanding that Israelis have, that that's what happened, I feel like there wouldn't be at all the ability for Palestinians to go back in. It's kind of just like, okay, it's going to be separate, but then where
Well,
do Palestinian
it's
people
happened
go back
before. There
to?
were intifadas before, and they still allowed that peace. Israel, I'm telling you this right now, the majority of Israelis just want peace. They whatever it takes, they just want the bombings to stop, the rockets, the suicide bombings, the stabbings in Jerusalem and stuff, and they just want all that to stop. That's why they keep giving the people of Palestine and Gaza like second chances. That's why they have different checkpoints with different rights depending on the level of terrorism that comes from a certain place. Because yeah, they're trying to protect themselves, but it's like the second one of the area becomes less dangerous, they give them more rights because they just want peace to happen. So um, I hope this is not like it didn't break the Israelis' will to continue to seek peace. I hope this didn't. I don't think it did. But the way that we create peace is where what you just did there, where you were like, well, this situation is fucked. So like, what can we do now? Until, and I think it's because you feel like I kind of understood your perspective. I think you understand some of mine, and I think that's why we could ask that question. The problem is like people don't feel understood enough to ask that question. What do we do now? Instead of back and forth fighting. Um,
Yeah. And I think that if everybody just like put their guard down and was like, okay, this is really fucked up. Everybody's fucked. This is really fucking bad. We need to stop what we're doing. And what do we do? I feel like, yeah, that's correct. Like, that's where we go. But until we get there, it's kind of just like we're just going to experience so much loss in the meantime. And I guess my question is, what, with all the people you've interviewed, what is the pro-Israel side doing to promote peace? Like, what is being done here in the States or over there or in other places to promote that peace that you're talking about? Because if most of, or if many Israeli people are for peace, I'm just curious about what's being done for that. Like, are they calling representatives like we are? Are they having protests as well? Like, what is happening?
the protest they had a protest at Washington D.C. They have some protests, and a lot of them they actually get assaulted. Um, and they're not doing enough of that. They just think that hard work and being good people is going to persevere, or hard work and like just trying to be productive, take care of your family and all that. They think it's going to be good enough, and this is why they get massacred after every few centuries or every few decades because they don't do they don't do a lot of like resistant bombings or protests or any kind. They don't do that. So they think doing exactly what they're doing is going to work, which is like, well, like what happened with um they're trying to like let more of the people of Gaza to come in with the work permits like that, like trying to do peace that way. They've had a lot of agreements on land, and terrorist bombing still happened even though they gave up a lot of land. They took their civilians and troops out of Gaza, um, and they thought that would create peace, but it didn't. Terrorist bombings continued. And it's not because we don't even have to say it's because of the Palestinians. We could say it's Iran, and Iran is like funding the schooling and everything. And UN isn't regulating the books that are there, and in public schools they're being taught to that Jews are the problems of everything in society, and they get paid for jihad. Like if a family member dies, killing some Jews, the family gets paid.
I've
Yeah,
heard that as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So with the Israelis, they keep trying to do the same thing, which is like not understand the perspectives of other people. And I think that's the problem. I think what I'm doing is pretty rare. I haven't really
It
seen it.
is. It is for sure.
Yeah, so I think if more of them do that and like not try to give facts, more like try to understand. Like when you said like the white imperialism stuff, like there's so many things I want to say about that, but like instead I'm like, okay, I just want to understand. I just want to listen more and see.
Right. And that's that's admirable. I feel like there's not a lot of spaces where I can speak to like a white person, right? And have them understand like or at least try, or at least respect, or not combat it, because thankfully I feel like for some parts we gotten to a point of history where people are like, racism is bad and we're not going to do that, and we need to elevate like the voices of black and brown people, and I need to like understand a little bit about like, what do you mean by that, like where does that come from, like this concept that like white colonialism, or this white hierarchy is evil, but I amend the fact that you are going out of your way to like bite your tongue, or like interview people and like get a perspective, because I feel like that's true, that is what we need. um but so as far as like where we are now, I kind of am like wondering, I feel like it may be too late for that piece, like you disagree, like what makes you disagree, because I feel like there's no peace in Palestine at all right now. There's just suffering and kind of hopelessness. So
I'm
where
just
do you think peace could come through?
I'm disagreeing because in 2021, I thought that at that point we would have hyperinflation. I thought by now we would have World War III. And none of that. Well, there is World War III, but it's like fifth generational. It's not, nukes haven't dropped yet. And I'm so wrong with like my timelines. And I guess I felt like there's no way that humans would actually like not destroy themselves by now. And they haven't. So I have, and so I think that there's no choice but to try to find that piece. I think just looking for it is enough. I think saying where am I wrong, that's more than enough. What we're doing here, I think, like parts work, in our psychology term, is like talking to both parts. Like that's what we're doing here. We're mediating between both parts. If you're resisting or protesting, there is no mediation. Everybody has one idea, like the protest outside New York Times. And if you say anything that, like, hey, why are we protesting against New York Times? Then you're just going to be shut down because then a protest, I think the discussion with opposing viewpoints, I think the more we do this, the more we realize, oh shit, I was wrong about this. I think that's the way. I think that's the way.
Mhm.
I think
And so
that's
what
the
are you
way.
gonna do? What are you gonna do with this, for example? Like
Yeah.
now that you've discussed and spoken to so many people, what is your next steps? Like what are you moving toward?
I'm moving toward, so I have a few videos, a few interviews. I'm gonna probably turn them into like reels, something short, and I might get like an editor to like make it kind of catchy. And what I want to show is cooperation. I want to show understanding of different viewpoints, but I also want to show people changing each other's minds. I want to show the empathy part, and I want people to see that, especially honestly, this is more for people. I want people on the left and the people who are pro-Palestine to see, okay, this person who doesn't agree with me understands me. And I think there we become less radicalized. We feel more empowered. We feel more understood. And then it's like, okay, how do we find a peaceful measure then? Um, that's my goal. That I don't, because if I do anything through violence, I just don't see how it's gonna work besides bring pain to me and my
Yeah,
family. Um,
right.
yeah. Um, but I actually do have a question for you. Did me what I said about like the IDF and how they try to do more precision strikes and like the phone calls that they do and the pamphlets, does that did any of that like change your mind a little bit about the IDF, or do you still hold that same viewpoint that you held before, or do you see things differently?
I'm not gonna lie. As as someone who has a complex like background, I feel like there's just a distrust for military, there's a distrust for police, there's a distrust for anything that serves a country via violence, even if it's through protection. I've seen the phone calls, I've seen the pamphlet dropping. I've heard of it, and I've seen it, and I've seen Palestinian people respond to that and like have actual proof, like look, like they did this. Um, while I feel that yes, that's a preparation to some people. I just can't have much sympathy because of what they do in hospitals or what they do in schools or what they've like for me, okay, that's like you tried something to have a little bit of humanity, but then you totally fucked it up because you know, dropped a bomb on a NICU unit where there was hundreds of hundreds of babies that babies aren't fucking terrorists. They're newly born. These are innocent lives. And so for me it's kind of like it seems a little bit hypocritical in my opinion that they do this sometimes, but then they do something like that. They do something like the Al Shifa Hospital, or
But
they do something like this
if
past week.
they hear you, the problem is if they hear you say that, they're gonna say like, well, I guess there's no difference with what we do, so why don't we just like stop caring, you know? Um, so that there's like they don't have to
And I
care. They don't have to.
right. But I feel like if there was no care, I feel like everything is on very thin ice, like if there was no care and if they outwardly had no motivation to care, then I feel like that would upset a lot more people and that would get a lot more people to be against that. Because if there's like, I don't care, we're just gonna plan to like attack these really large populated areas with no concern about who's there or what's there, then I feel like that's gonna
But do you
disrupt a
see
lot more
now?
people.
But do you see now why Israel is going to continue doing the bombings then? Because no, because people aren't not enough people are saying, hey, well, why doesn't Hamas just stop sending the rockets? And a lot of the reason is like, the colonialism aspect. It's our land, so therefore the rockets aren't going to stop. And if they're not going to stop, then more Palestinian people will die. It's not something that I want. It's not something that I want. And for me, personally, like it sickens me a little bit that so many people who are like not in the conflict are advocating for more rockets to be sent into Israel. So then the conflict continues. Like that does sicken me, and and they're not saying, okay, let's talk and let's find a way for peace. They believe kind of like what you're saying. I think resistance is the only way. And it's like, well, if resistance is the only way, then more kids are going to die. And I guess I want to understand that a little bit more. Why is that? Why is more death so necessary? And what is the goal with these deaths?
I definitely, like I said, when I talk about resistance, I'm not necessarily only talking about violence.
Well, not
I'm
you. I
not
guess
even an advocate.
the other people, not you.
Right. I feel like that's a similar thing too. I feel like I said, I feel like it would be hypocritical for people to be like, I don't want there to be any violence, but then support the violence of innocent people in Israel. Like that doesn't make any sense. Um, I think that when we speak about resistance, we are speaking about the chance for these less powerful groups, these marginalized groups, to have a chance of like survival or have a chance at like what we want, which is, like I feel like peace. And right now, what everyone's fighting for is a ceasefire. And with what you're saying, like if there's no care, or if there's no like acceptance of the fact that there's no difference in what they do, whether they drop pamphlets or not, and they're just killing people, then why? Then they're not going to stop. Um, that's I think our biggest thing right now is the fact that we need a ceasefire. Like
There was
it's
one.
not going to
There
stop
was
unless
one.
there's a ceasefire.
There was a
True, but
cease.
then people are still
Yeah,
dying.
no. Well, there was one for 4 days, and then 15 minutes after the ceasefire started, no, that it was initiated, Hamas sent rockets. And for the 4 days, Hamas kept breaking the ceasefire. And there was also that ceasefire for 2 years. And all Hamas had to do was stick to it. I guess my biggest question to you is why would it have been so bad for Hamas to not do October 7th? Why would that be bad?
I I am not, for everything that I know. I am not a person who's like, I condemn any violence on innocent civilians. I do not support Hamas's intentions for mass murder. Um, I I don't agree with the mass murder of anybody, and I also don't agree with the fact that, with what you're saying, there's a ceasefire, but we're gonna send rockets too because now there's no fighting. So let's say something. I feel like that it doesn't work, and I think it's stupid. Honestly, I really, really do. Um, but as far as like a ceasefire goes, I feel like the UN voted for one recently. Um, and I am just really
I'm
hoping
okay with a
for the best.
ceasefire. I'm okay with a ceasefire. I'm okay with a
Right.
permanent ceasefire, but a real permanent ceasefire.
That includes no bombing from either side.
Yes.
I agree with that. I
Yes.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like the violence just needs to stop.
Yeah,
And
I
with
agree.
that, I feel like a lot of people would agree. There are some kind of fucked up people in the head that are like, no, you're fucked up, but it needs to stop. And with that being said, um, I feel like we just need more of a perspective. I feel like it needs to be about Palestine, and it needs to be about Palestine. It's about Hamas. It's about violence towards Israel. It's about this movement towards pushing Israel out. It needs to be about the Palestinian people,
I agree.
and that's what that's what we're pushing for. Like I feel like we need everybody to understand that, including Palestinians who are part of Hamas. Like it needs to be about the people. And with what you were saying, like they started an ambush, a small group, knowing that shit's gonna bite them in the ass and murder so many of their own people. Like I feel like there's who can support that,
A
Um,
lot of the pro-Palestinian people actually, if you don't do this by the way, because I don't want it to shock you too much, but if you go up to like five people, if you go to one of those protests, ask five people if they condemn October 7th, you're not gonna like what you hear because they're not gonna like answer you. So don't do it. I want you to continue doing what you're doing because it seems like you're very passionate about it. But the people who actually do support October 7th, a lot of them are in those crowds. I just want you to be aware of that.
and I definitely understand that. Like I feel like there's always people who they seem to be on the right side of history, and then they're just like, wait, but you're doing exactly what the oppressor's doing, you know?
Mm.
Um, so as far as this, I don't think any murder of innocent people is justified. My opinion is that resistance is necessary, in any shape or form, and the last place that we go is violence. But it's fucking sucks that violence is the first place that everybody else goes, and that's why there's so much of it.
It's not where
But
Israel goes, by the way. I just want you to know about Israel. It's not the first place they go to. There, I think, I think it's still also the last place that they go to, but they still go there. I want that to be. They
right,
have the Iron Dome system there for a reason. I think if anybody, so that's the 1 hour. Just a lot like the point that I want to make is I think that if anybody attacked the United States, we wouldn't just do an over the Iron Dome system. We would kill like millions of people in whatever country they came from. So I
I
think
agree. Yeah.
yeah. So um, that's the I'm a little. I'll be honest. I'm a little disappointed that like I couldn't change your mind like a little bit more, but I know that your mind is going to like the resistance thing and then the last resort. I'm trying to figure out a way of doing it the most peaceful way, like the colonizing, like the whites, the white colonizers, like what to do. And I think that if we see them as individuals, they all have problems. We all have problems, and I think that like if there's a higher push for like therapy, parts work, things like that, understanding our emotions and our parts, the more we are good to our parts, the more we will try to be, we will care about other people. And
Right.
I think that's what we need to do a push for. And that's what's happening in the videos. In these videos, I'm like, I'm talking, well, it seems like I'm just talking to you, but I'm also trying to talk to different parts of you. And
No, of course, right.
yeah, so I
And
think we have
yeah,
something there. Yeah.
and I can understand where any disappointment may lie. Of course, like for me, when I talk to anybody who is not on my side and they just don't understand, or like they don't see what I see, it's very frustrating, you know. But I do really appreciate the way that you went about the conversation and then the respect that you had. I think that what you're doing is really important, and I wish you a lot of luck with it. Don't be discouraged. I am from, you know, like I just have a very complex background. Like I said, I've been an organizer, activist for a long time, and I push for what is right for me, and it's hard for anybody to kind of alter my perspective. But I definitely think you opened my understanding of the pro-Israel side a little bit more, especially because of the fact that a lot of people are condemning like pro-Israel groups to be like unhumane, you know, and like not have humanity. You seem like you have humanity. You seem like you have respect. And so that's clearly not true. So you definitely did your part, I think, in trying to show that peace is wanted. And I don't see a lot of that. So you definitely did your part, and I appreciate that. And I think I speak for everybody when we say that I'm a human, you're a human. I wouldn't want anybody in your ancestry to die, and I hope that you wouldn't want anybody from mine, you know. And I hope that that would be the common consensus among people, but it's not. So I'm glad that there's people who have humanity left who are pushing towards these initiatives of like, okay, where do we go? What do we do? We cannot stay here. And I think that that's what we both agree on. It cannot stay like this at all, you know. So I appreciate the interview, um and I got something from it. I hope you got something from it.
I got something from it. Thank you. And yeah, thanks again. And take care. Good luck with finals. You're having finals, right? Or
I'm finished with finals. I'm all done, so
all
thank you.
right.
I appreciate it.
Good luck with
Yeah,
relaxing after finals. All right.
thank you.
Bye bye
Please
bye.
take care of yourself, okay?
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.